All right, welcome back to the weekly roundup. I'm Dylan Silbernagel. That's Jennifer, Mike, and Melissa joining me today. We are the coaches with PSN Coaching, and we're coming hot off a presentation from the Orea Task Force talking about the Orea Ontario
Wellness.
Realtors Wellness Plan. And so, seeing as how this presentation was just done for our brokerage, we thought we'd jump on and discuss it. I think we're all a part of various groups, various WhatsApp chats, and we can see that this is kind of a contentious topic for a lot of realtors. So I think it's a good thing that we discuss openly. I got to say that coming into the presentation, I feel better now on the other side of it. So I just want to go around the table first and maybe just get high level thoughts on where you were prior to the presentation, and then let's kind of talk about it and then figure out where we all stand now. In terms of our opinions on that. Jen, I'm going to start with you. So prior to the presentation today, where were you? What were you thinking when you found out about this?
I think have always been on board with it. I actually wondered previously why we didn't have something like this already, considering how many members there are. I mean, we're up to 96,000 realtors that are eligible for the plan, and by eligible, I mean if it passes, will be required because it's the whole thing is the mandatory versus opt in, opt out, right? But yeah, I've always been a fan of it. I think it's a good idea. I think that we have the volume to make it accessible to a lot of agents who potentially couldn't afford it otherwise. And, I have no issue paying a small annual amount to benefit a large group of people and to benefit personally from that. I think it's a good thing,
All
personally.
right. All right. Mike, what about you? Where were you prior to the meeting?
Yeah. So to kind of give you an idea, like I don't have a benefits plan. So for me right away, I was like, yeah, this is cool because I've looked into it in the past. And for an individual plan, for what I wanted, I was priced at like $180 a month, right? And this one is obviously 600 a year, so it's like 55 bucks a month, whatever it is.
Yep.
So initially I was like, yeah, I love this. Like this is great for me. This is going to benefit me. Now I can understand the side that if I had a spouse that covered me through their package, that it's frustrating that it's mandatory. I can see that part for
Mhm.
sure. But you know what? I heard a really great argument this morning in like to counteract that, and it's. I mean, I'm going to throw it out to you guys. Have you guys ever used your errors and omissions insurance?
Yeah, I haven't used it.
No.
Right?
I have.
And do you have? Okay, so
You're
there you
welcome,
go.
Mel.
But yeah, every single
I
year, we all
won, by
pay
the
into
way.
that. Nah, that a girl. I
Good.
love that. But we all pay into that because as a group, if you need it, it's nice to have it, right? I've never used it, knock on wood, never had to use it yet. Dylan, Jen, you guys have been in the industry, almost triple the amount I have, and you haven't had to use it yet, knock on wood, of course. And you've paid it this entire time, but you've never complained about it, right? And why is that? And the idea is that it's because it's a group thing, right? We all pay in a little bit so that when somebody does mess up or something happens and it's an error or omissions, whatever it is, they're covered, right?
Yeah.
And so when
Now,
I
Mike,
heard
I'm
that
going to
argument,
jump in and cut you off because I want to get into
yeah,
that side of the argument a little bit
yeah,
more. But let's hear
yeah.
from Mel real quick on Mel. Where were you prior to the meeting today?
Well, I come from a situation where I have been self-employed 90% of my life, whether it's
Hmm.
been in this profession or another one. I understand the benefits of, affordable benefits
Hmm.
for
Mhm.
all. And I think I know you're going to get into this, but there's two things I'll say high level. One is I was pretty shocked and appalled at how people were approaching, and I will say it in air quotes, this discussion or debate about it because it wasn't.
Hmm.
So I have lots to say about that, coming from a whole bunch of negotiators, supposedly, and how they approached that. I think it was telling. And the second thing is, I always say ask questions first. Like there was so many opinions flying without questions being asked. So my second high level thought is I have been with my husband used to have benefits and I was covered under it and the kids were covered under it. But if you have a secondary benefit, it actually is to your benefit. I hate using that word again,
Mhm.
but I mean, you can use your spouse's coverage and then you can, most of the time it's 80 or 50 or 60 or 70. And then this coverage can actually supplement and cover more of it. And I think if
Mm.
people asked more questions about it, and I'm very much like Jen, uh, sorry, I mean, I said at the beginning, tongue in cheek, but heck, I'll pay someone else's $600 a year then. So like to me, it is so much of a benefit. And I love your argument as well, Mike, or your fact that you brought in too. So
Yeah, right. It's
Mhm.
it's all the same.
mhm.
I totally agree with you. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Mhm.
and they broke that down nicely on the presentation today, showing how affordable the monthly fee is when you break this thing down. I know that Orea we do annual dues as opposed to quarterly or monthly, but nonetheless, if you break it down per month, comparing it to another platform or another program, it's one of the most affordable ones out there, bar none, right?
Oh,
I think it
100%.
is the most affordable, like without a
yeah,
doubt. It's $2 a day or something. Like that's
Mhm.
nothing.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm not even trying
And
to
the
be a spokesperson for them, but
Yeah.
literally, like I've
Mm.
looked at it on my own as an individual to get my own plan, and it was close to $200 a month
Yeah.
for me, right?
And I would
So
say too, like coming from a situation, and Dylan, we've been in this our whole relationship. We're both realtors. We're both self-employed.
Mhm.
We've never had benefits. And, luckily enough, being on the younger end of things and, for a long tough time not having kids, we kind of rolled the dice on it and we're like, well, it's expensive. I don't want to pay that out monthly. Like, there's a good chance we're not going to need it. But you get to a point where, like you do want to be smarter. You do want to have some life insurance. You do have kids in the picture. You do have all these additional things. And everything's getting more expensive, right? Dental, like I know not all this is fully covered yet, and there's going to be opt-ins and there's that whole scale thing. But all of that being said, this would have been the first opportunity for us, really, specifically for two of us, to have access to something that was reasonably affordable, that we wouldn't have had before, and we haven't had for the past seven. Like, I've been doing this for 17 years, and I've never had benefits, right?
mhm.
Yeah, in terms of the cost, in terms of like looking at what our dues are, at first I was like, well, this is a no-brainer because I look at what I pay the Toronto board every year and I'm like, what am I getting for that? They're taking away this. This doesn't work. Realm is like iffy at best for me sometimes. So what am I paying for? Now I look at this and I'm like, oh, I can use that massage stuff. I can go see the chiropractor. There is mental health stuff there. There is the prescription drugs there. There's all those things. There's the travel insurance. And I'm like, I'm sure I can, at the very least, the massages, I'm definitely gonna make my money back in terms of that. And then when they brought up that our membership dues for Orea are only $110, I looked at that for a second. I was like, okay, now I'm actually upset because that is a gigantic increase in terms of what our dues were before to what they are now. Even though I know it's all going towards
Yeah.
uh,
Mhm.
towards the
And
program.
it's not, yeah. They
Yeah,
did specify too. The dues are not changing. It's
no,
just
the
that the
dues aren't changing,
premium
but my
for
fee
the
to Orea.
benefits are getting added.
So what's funny there, going back to Mel's topic that she brought up that I want to kind of get into, is looking at how people are approaching this. Just the framing of that, like I was on board. I'm still on board, to be very clear. I think that this is a good thing. But when I look at the increase in what I'm paying Orea, I was all of a sudden I was like, well, that's a big increase, and it was just because of that framing. For
The way
myself
they did it.
personally, I
Yeah.
look at, I'm like, wow, I'm jumping from 110 to 768 or whatever it is, right? It's not so much now
Mhm.
looking at, well, 768 gets me X, X, and X, which is fantastic. So I think that that's an important thing for all of us to take note, is when you are talking with different people, there will be different triggers in terms of how you need to frame a certain, maybe an offer that you're bringing somebody or a situation or a certain outcome. Because I felt myself in that one moment be like, well, that's a big increase when I was already on
Yeah.
board with what the price was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like they
No, and I
almost
totally agree
over
with that.
explained it.
They did. For
Yeah.
me personally, again, for a personal framing of it, I felt like that was over explained because I looked at the increase as opposed to previously I was just looking at the number and the benefits, and I was like, well, that's rock solid, and
Yeah.
ultimately that's still how I
Hmm.
feel. So Mel, I want to throw it to you. Go on with some of that stuff that you were alluding to there in terms of how in general we've seen people react to this news, because I think what you were also kind of hinting at was, as trained negotiators in a lot of situations, we're consultants for a lot of people, we're used to asking questions, seek first to understand, especially in KW.
Mm,
And that wasn't the reaction that we saw from this one, so it's kind
no.
of curious that that's the way that it played out.
And in fact, that kept me outside of that particular conversation
Mm-hmm.
because it was very clear that this was not a discovery conversation. Like, we say as realtors, I mean, we coach as coaches that when there is a block, when that no comes up, that's the beginning of the conversation. And by conversation, I mean listening. Right? The best
Mhm.
conversation is where you ask questions. And I mean, I would love to copy and paste and clip that whole, it was literally all day, guys, like from AM to PM. And it was
Mhm.
all ego and personal reactions. And, I only give a care about me and my family. And I was like embarrassed, to be honest. I was like, what? Only because, like question it, understand it, seek to understand, I guess is the best way to say it. But I was just very shocked. We come across these situations every day as a realtor, right? Where something is a block and we're trying to seek to understand where their position is and where that common ground is. And I don't know about you guys, but I didn't see it. And it brings it right back to the fundamentals of coaching and, and having a mentor and asking questions. He who asks questions, I always say, is in control of that conversation. And there were very little questions, very few questions, and a whole bunch of finger pointing and soapbox standing. And that is not an environment where any healthy debate or understanding and questioning can occur. So to me, it was a bunch of noise. And I kind of was wondering what they could have been doing with their time that perhaps would have brought them a better outcome. And I truly stand by that. And I know they'll see this, and I still stand by it. And I say,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too because obviously we were all following it, and you can help out. I think our phones were blowing up for a good portion of the day, but what was interesting to me was that the issue didn't seem to be with the plan itself. The issue was with the word mandatory, the use of the word mandatory specifically. And the
mm-hmm.
minute that word came into play, it was a trigger, right? And you could see
Yes.
people getting defensive. And I don't think the defense, not to defend them necessarily, but I don't think the defense came from an issue with what was being offered or the plan itself or the value of the plan itself. And I think that maybe that's why it was more of a soapbox feel to it. The issue was with that they weren't being given the choice, and the fact, and looking at it from their perspective. And as much as I don't agree with it, because I think for the greater good is the right decision, and we're in an business opportunity to create something that not everyone else in a sole proprietor business gets the opportunity to participate in. So I think they're still kind of looking inward on that. I agree with you there, Mel. Um, I do think they got hung up on the mandatory. And it was funny because no matter how much logic was being thrown out, the emotion of not having the choice was really where people were getting stuck, right?
Yeah,
It's right
and
back
and
to
I and I
masks
agree with that.
and COVID and the whole kit and caboodle,
Mm.
and stay in order. And that's how masks and toilet paper became the theme of 2020.
Yeah, that's actually Mel. I was just about to kind of highlight that is that we've just kind of come off a couple good years of people mandatory this, mandatory that, and it's gotten frustrating. And that's why, like yesterday, yeah, like reading the chat, and again, like it went overnight. Like there were still comments this morning, and I was like, holy cow, this thing is going off.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I can understand their side for sure. I can understand the frustration. I can understand their position. And to a lot of points, I agree with what they had to say in terms of like, why me, or why do I have to do this if I'm already covered? And I get it. But really, truly, like I know some individuals that are, they're husband and wife, they're at two different businesses and they're in their own benefits plans because they're mandatory within their own business, or they're mandatory within those corporations, right? And that's in order for that group to get a discounted rate. And so, yeah, they're double covered. Um, and it is a common thing and it does happen, and I understand it. But the thing that the one thing that I looked at is like, or I thought about, is that for me as an individual who's not covered, it's great for me, which is awesome. And it's so affordable. So even if I'm already covered by my spouse, I would probably still opt into it because it's only $600 a year, or whatever it is, $650 a year. Like that isn't that much money when you compare an individual plan just to get double coverage, just to have that,
Mhm.
like Mel was saying, have coverage here that you can use, and then have your own coverage that you can still take advantage of. Like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
your
For
your
$600.
coverage. And maybe people don't understand that. Maybe they haven't ever had two plans and they don't
Yeah.
understand. But they'll get, especially if they're using, prescriptions, all of that business, they'll get a good chunk of that back just by using the copay part with
Yep.
our insurance, let's say, right? So now they're
Yep.
going to get whatever that percentage is of our copay.
Yeah.
And I totally hear you, Mike. It just, you know what? It just irked me. It wasn't what they were
It was
saying.
delivered incorrectly. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, you
Yeah.
guys are
Yeah.
realtors representing like professional
Yeah.
negotiators. And
Yeah,
basically it
for
just
sure.
took everything we coach, took a match and set fire to it. It was like,
That
what is
is true.
happening?
That
Yeah.
is true. It
I
We
was
agree.
should take
very
all
Like
those names,
emotional.
the
take all those
execution could have been
names
done
and
better, for sure.
send them some
Yeah.
coaching info.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Yeah.
execution could have been done better for sure. And again, like I said, like I can definitely see their side of it. Shoot, I had a thought that I was gonna. Oh, that was a thought. Like, I mean, I'm 26. I don't use prescription drugs that much. I'm not gonna use much of this benefit plan. It's $600 a year. But they came out and they said, chiropractic and massages are included up to $750. And I literally, first thing I said to Dylan when I got on the call was, boom, look at that, I'm covered. I don't even care anymore. Like, I'm happy with just that, right? And I don't even
Yeah.
need the rest of the stuff. I'm just happy with just that, because that is something that I find beneficial, and I will pay for massages outside because I don't have coverage, and I go and I pay it, and it's whatever it is. So it'd be nice to have that, and that's a part
Yeah.
of it, which is great. So that
It's
right
like,
there is worth it.
good point, Mike, because if you get 4 massages a year, you've pretty much spent the exact same amount.
Toast.
You've spent the
Yeah.
exact same amount that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
could get all these other benefits rolled in, right?
Yeah.
And I think part of it too is looking at the plan as a whole, right? People were picking and choosing which parts they liked and didn't like. But if you actually look at it and you go, okay, there's unlimited mental health support with access
That's
to an
incredible.
online app
Mhm.
and online representatives at any given time. Like, we know how hard this industry is. We coach people all the time that struggle and have financial stress or personal home life stress, and they, we've never had access to anything like that. So that's invaluable just on its own. And then you add in the travel insurance and the life insurance and the accidental dismemberment and death insurance, and the fact that those both pay out, right? That you get both paid out to your family and all. Like, there's so much value there. And you're basically, if you want to look at it at the base level, you're paying into a minimum of $100K life insurance policy for $650 a year. That's not bad. You know what I mean? Like, and that's
Yeah,
just the
that you don't
basics
have any
of it, not including all
pre-test
the
to do.
perks.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point.
You don't have to even test for it. Like, I talked to some agents today, and they were like, Mike, I would love to have life insurance. I can't get it because of my condition, like because of my whatever they have, right?
Mhm.
Like, I
Because you're
literally
a
can't get it.
smoker, or because you have predetermined
Yeah.
health,
High
whatever
blood
it
pressure,
is,
high
right?
cholesterol,
Yep.
whatever it is. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like,
Yeah.
shit. Yeah. I mean, me being the age that I am, I'm like, I don't think of that, because I'm like, well, that's not applicable to me. But I'm like, wow, that's an actual serious problem for somebody. Like, they actually don't have coverage,
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the
Dylan, what
other
about
thing
you?
is,
You've been relatively, sorry, Mel, you've been relatively quiet so far. What are your thoughts with the chat and with everything we've kind of touched on?
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with the three of you. I almost wish that we had somebody else on our show today that didn't agree, because the one thing that I'll take away is, what I've noticed from our conversation is all four of us don't currently have another form of coverage. So this is truly benefiting the four of us pretty easily, right? And I think it is fair to say that the visceral reaction that we saw from people that are kind of against this, it is very much so the mandatory element of it, right? Which I think we can understand. We have varying opinions, or kind of congruent opinions, on how we think you should handle when something like that comes your way. But nonetheless, when there isn't an option, and the one thing that, as I'm sitting here listening to you guys, because I'm very content to just kind of throw it to you and listen to where you guys are at, but it goes back to something that Mel and I have been talking about from the Tony Robbins training that we've been receiving this year. And it's when we look at options, right? 1 is no choice, 2 is a dilemma, and 3 is actually you have some options to look at right now, right? And so we're looking at, in this situation where, again, it's mandatory, there's no choice whatsoever, and the reaction that we got. So that just reminds me, when I'm dealing with people or when I'm working with my clients, to keep that part in mind. Like, even if it's about reframing something so that we have different versions of an option, it goes a long way to help people from getting their back up. Because when you tell people that something is mandatory, we've seen the reaction that it can give, right? Especially as you guys have alluded to, Mike, about, we're coming off a few years of things being mandatory and freedoms being taken away, right? In that sense. So,
Mm-hmm.
And it's frustrating.
yeah, it's frustrating. So looking at
Yeah.
as an opportunist, always looking to learn and grow, that's the one thing I will take from this whole scenario is that I don't ever want to put somebody in a situation where they feel like they don't have a choice for something. Now, that being said, I think that all four of us on here clearly agree that the lack of choice in this situation is for the greater good. I think that it is going to help more people than it's going to burden in terms of the costs. I do agree with the other side saying, it's tough times for some, so why add on a bigger fee? I get that argument, but when I look at it as an overall for the greater good of how it's going to help people, I'm on board for it. If I had to go vote tomorrow, I would vote yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I might struggle with it a little bit more if it was like 6,000, right?
Yeah.
But really,
Yeah.
truly, it's
Oh, yeah.
$600. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know about you guys. I have spent $600 on way stupider shit, like way stupider stuff, and it happens
Oh,
way
yeah.
more than I wanted to.
On the regular,
You,
Mike, on the
you were
regular.
just
It's like
on
two
the
golf
regular.
Vegas.
clubs.
You were just in Vegas, buddy.
I just made a healthy
That was one
donation
spin of the wheel,
to-
Mel.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just made one healthy donation to Park MGM that
Yeah.
probably would cover that. You know what I mean? Like it's very easily spent. And again, it is a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. It's $600, but really, in the grand scheme of things, if you're looking at your business and growing your business, it is peanuts in comparison to where for what the value is outside of what we're getting, the discount for what we're getting, right?
If you
I think
look
they were
at
saying there's over $2,000 in savings, right? Something like that.
yes, compared to some of the other ones, 100%. If you
Yeah.
tried to go shop this on your own, that's the kind of savings you'd be looking at if you went with this plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
No?
there's two things about it too. And one, like we say, they were coming from the standpoint, or the parts I could stand to read were coming from the standpoint of this is duplicating my insurance. And again, I stand by it is not. It actually is a supplemental insurance if you already have it. And like I said, I am married to someone who was for 30 years in the corporate world and had it until he gets packaged out. And so when you don't have that insurance all of a sudden, as will happen to everybody for whatever reasons as you go down, like just thinking outside the box in bigger ways and how could I make this work and what are the other opportunities and, I love how even in Tony too, like writing down the pros and the cons and not everything on the list has the same weight, right? It's just because it's all listed con doesn't mean they're all the same cons. So really, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I think looking at what Mike has done is kind of the smart way that everybody should approach it. Okay, this is happening. So now what are the options that I'm going to implement to how to make this work for me, right? Oh, look, got these massages here for up to $700. Right away, that instantly going to cover my mandatory fee because I'm going to go get $700 worth of massages. Where else can I use this plan to benefit me so I'm getting more value than I'm actually even paying in? Right. I think that's
like even my own brother, like he has a health plan. Sorry to cut you off there, Jen. And I talk to him about it all the time. And I'm like, do you use it? Like, do you go and get this stuff done? He's like, no, I don't use it at all. And I'm like, why not? Like you have, he and his plan's incredible. He's a plumber, right? And he has an amazing plan. He's got chiropractic, vision, all that stuff. And I'm like, why not? Like just go and use it. Like you're paying for it anyways. You might as well just take advantage of it. Take those massages. I mean, who doesn't like a massage? Like it really, truly, like I don't think I've ever met someone that doesn't. So why wouldn't you just use it and treat this as a way to invest in yourself and your own body to have that improvement, right? That's the way that I look at it.
Just to jump right in there, Mike, even forget the massage part, like where it's the relaxing element and like fixing a muscle thing. Use it to go visit the chiropractor. Make sure your body's working for you. Make sure you're aligned. Make sure you haven't thrown something on a whack because I guarantee you, all of us, everybody could go visit a chiropractor and they're going to find something that they can improve your health with. Say that one thing is a little bit out of shape and you can make one minor tweak, and that tweak might add longevity to your life, might add, let's say, quality of life in terms of you can run longer, go on walks longer, all that kind of stuff. And it's just that investment that's already there. So why don't we evaluate it like that and say, hey, this is something that is going to, I wouldn't have done this otherwise, and now I can.
Exactly.
I wonder if it covers a Goskew.
I doubt it. I was going to say, it's so funny you guys went exactly where I was going to say. I was literally going to bring up the point that even if you already have other benefits, it just enhances your quality of life. But
Oh,
Nope,
oh.
If only
we
we
lost
could
her.
enhance Jen's internet while we were here.
Can you guys collectively donate to my internet connection? That'd be great. For the greater good, guys, for the greater good. Everyone needs to know what I have to say. No, I was just going to say that's exactly where I was going, right? Quality of life and the opportunity for the $50 a month, which is cheaper than a lot of gym memberships, to be able to enhance your mental health or your physical being or whatever that looks like. Um, it's it's just something that we can't take for granted, and this gives us the opportunity to be better about that and take care of ourselves more if we want to be on the really altruistic side of things.
Yeah. I think the one thing
Dylan,
we
I
haven't
just
we haven't touched on real quick is the travel insurance, right? Because every time I fly, I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking
Mhm.
at my credit card, making sure I'm booking with the right one, that it's got the right plan. Am I purchasing something additional as well? And this one, up to 60 days out of the country, you have access to that plan, right? So going back to what's supplemental and what I can top up on, I know that I'm covered in those situations. And of
You're
course,
covered again. Yeah, you're double
covered
covered
again.
now, right? We had
And
the
again,
credit card and
if it's
now
a bad
this.
accident and you're in an expensive place like you're in the U.S. and it becomes a $150,000 medical bill, I want to know that I've got a couple of options to help me pay that thing off.
Yeah,
Mhm.
100%. Yeah, I didn't hear them talk about that too much because I kind of tuned out there for a second, but it is a great benefit to have in that sense that like I'm the same way, Dylan. Like when I went away, I'm like I literally had to call my credit card company. Okay, what am I covered for? Can I get a
Yes.
rental car? Can I get am I covered for medical? How much medical? Because even though I'm covered, how much is it? Because
How
again, you
much
go to
is
the
it?
U.S.
Yeah.
Holy cow,
Yeah.
you could burn through 50,000 in 6 hours. You know what I mean? Like they can really rack it up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's
what am
crazy.
I covered for?
We
So
should
Yeah.
we
what
The
Dylan,
damage
we
can I
should
do?
give a we should give them out tips because you and I both know personally that if they go through and look at all their subscriptions that they aren't using that are coming off
Yeah,
those credit cards, I bet you
yes.
they'll find more than $600 to pay for that, right?
Oh, easily,
Yeah.
easily,
Yeah.
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 easily.
All
You know
those
And I
the only
think it's
files.
a
Go ahead there, Jen.
I was just going to say, I think it's important to note too that this is still going to vote on the 20th, right? So it still has to get voted through before it gets rolled out in January of 2024. But it does look like it will be pushed through
Yeah,
positively by the vote next week. But we are still waiting for that final confirmation. So just wanted to buffer that into the
Yeah,
conversation
totally.
somewhere.
I think that that's
yeah. It's
important.
not confirmed 100%. You're right, but yeah, it does look
Yeah.
like it's probably gonna go. It's
Yeah.
gonna happen.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so quick around the table. I think that's kind of where we're at. But having discussed it, watched the presentation, where are you guys sitting at now? Just put a pin in it because I think we're solid. Where are you sitting at now
Yeah,
after having watched the presentation?
yeah. Like I said earlier, like I'm definitely on board. I don't have coverage. This allows me to have coverage, which is great. It's for $600 versus what I looked at in the past. That was over $200 a month
Hmm.
for the same coverage, or actually, I think in this case it was actually less coverage. Um, it's a no-brainer for me for sure.
Yeah. What about you, Mel?
Yeah, I like looking at something based on the benefits. What are the benefits? What are the benefits for me? But what are the benefits for the industry? What are the benefits for everything? And if I'm not getting hurt, like I'm not getting debilitated in it in any way,
Hmm.
then I think that there's opportunity there always.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And what about yourself,
Mhm.
Jen?
Same thing. I think, the benefit of everybody. And, I think you hit the nail earlier, Dylan. Like we're all benefiting from this, like everyone on this call. So it's a little harder and I can understand the the challenge with the mandatory piece of it. I understand that perspective. I just
Mhm.
don't see a downside to it. Even when you break it down, you're still able to top up, you're still benefiting from both, and it's not a big cost for that perk, right? So I'm still fully on board with it. And I think it's great that we're finally collectively doing something to support
Hmm.
people who don't have access to this.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
I think overall in the long run, it's going to help a lot more people than it even comes close to hurting. And looking
Yeah.
at realtors' budgets in general, like because I know the mandatory thing and the cost of it is probably the biggest counter argument. And I think we all know as realtors that we have a lot of monthly subscriptions and services marketed to us all the time that we don't really need, that we could easily cut one of those things and you're picking up life insurance and medical care. So I think it's a no brainer.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
wise person, I just want to say one more thing. A wise person once told me, we spend a lot of attention and time on what we're paying, and what we should be paying more attention to is what are you getting out of it? And I
Nice.
think that
Love
was
that.
lost, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the words of Terry, let's all go sell some real estate.
all
All
Love
right,
her.
everybody. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining us today. We hope you catch us again next Thursday. I'm Dylan. That's Jen. That's Mike. That's Mel. We will see you next time.
right.